Hi, and welcome back. We are on episode 69.
Episode
We're
69, yeah,
almost getting close to the end of this book.
very close, yeah. So this episode is called The Secret Joy. And in the previous episode, we basically watched the installation of Yeshua and his family into the little community of Yumsog, located near the city of Srinagar in the Kashmir. So we also witnessed the healing of Malchus,
Right.
who was paralyzed with his two lower legs. And so this is our next to last episode. I skipped a couple of things which I think are not really relevant from the book. There is a meeting with the local king. So we're going to talk quickly about it as a summary. And but we will put most of the emphasis on the Council of Harwan, which will happen a little bit later, which is the most important. Yeah. So just to give a few news about the Yeshua and his family. So Sarah has married a nephew of Malchus. This nephew is called Yabid. And Yabid happens to be the man who helps Yeshua all over the place. He's constantly with him. He's also his best and first disciple in the community of Yumsarg, So he's a young guy, very, very active and very has a lot of potential. And so he's becoming the disciple of Yeshua, and he helps him with all kind of daily problems, logistics and so forth. Yeah. And the name of Isha or Eshe is becoming known by a lot of people in the area, as well as the name of Asaph, which means the gatherer, the reconciliator, basically the person who puts everybody together and finds an agreement, the diplomat.
The diplomat, yeah.
So, and those two names are very important, Isha and Eshe as his first name. And then the last name they use Asaph, A-S-A-P-H. Okay? Because we will see why in the next episode. So the results in Meruvardhana were much better. The results of enlightenment were better than what Yeshua could achieve around the lake of Kinnereth in Capharnaum, okay? Or even in Jerusalem. And we know why, because those people are more in tune with nature. They are grounded. They are in the mountains.
Where he is right now.
Yes, where he is right now, yeah. And so they are more receptive to other teachings, and especially abstract teachings and notions.
Well, probably because they haven't been exposed to anything else.
Yes,
right?
Very true.
So
and they are not stuck and paralyzed, into
a
doctrine, dogmas, and yeah. So Yeshua is thinking that obviously the overload of sun was frightening men in Palestine, Yeah. And often this overload is preparing what will come later, but at the beginning it is frightening. So Yeshua is thinking about his past a lot, and he agrees that his destiny has been perfect, as he could not have lived one more year with the Christic energy inside him. So again, we have to realize that the hosting the Christic energy in a physical body is an immense and very daunting task, and only him could do it at this point. Okay? So he did it between the age of 31 and 36. And during the crucifixion, that energy, as we saw it in the mystery of Golgotha, left his body to get into the mount, near Jerusalem, into the earth, to have to be able to touch many more people than just himself,
Right.
And actually, he's quite happy that things happen in this way, because it was really a challenge for him to host that Christic energy, for so long.
That's a lot, I guess, on the nervous system, right?
Yes, nervous and physical system. Yeah. So his public mission really lasted 5 years, from the age of 31 years to 36 years. This is when he was really teaching, the masses and having all his disciples. And again, this is different from what has been colported by the church, and who used a number of 3 years and 33 years for his crucifixion, and those numbers have different meanings.
Right.
Yeah, they are not.
They always have to stick them in somewhere.
Yes, they are not the reality. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And one morning, seeing his hair, that Mariam is the wife of Thomas, the brother of Yeshua, who left to India and lost his life fighting against the caste system in the southern part of India.
Mm-hmm.
So she was taking care of him, she was cutting his hair, and he realized that how white his hair has become, and he realized that his back was still straight, but the muscle of his body were not as hard as before.
Mm-hmm.
And his walk was not so assured, he was not so confident about it.
Right. And he's how old now?
Well, I think at this point he's probably in his 50s or 60s, perhaps even more. We're going to have some more information.
But he put a lot of mileage on that body.
Yes, he
right?
did.
I mean, think of all the walking he did, thousands of miles.
So I have tried to summarize, the meeting he had with the local king, Gopadatta. So Gopadatta had made a journey to the mountain of Solomon, and he noticed that the temple, which was protecting the black lingam, we talked about that before, right?
Mm-hmm.
That ovoid shaped stone that came from outer space and landed at that place, so the temple was in need of repairs and maintenance. But interestingly, the local priest, driven by a man named Suleimani, were opposed to the repairs.
Yeah.
So the king wanted to do the repair and make the temple more beautiful, but the priest didn't like that idea. And so Yeshua was called. He had been requested in front of the king and Suleimani as an ambassador and mediator.
Oh, okay.
And after a successful discourse, Yeshua had been named Asaph, again, the gatherer, the mediator, the person who brings the people back together. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so people in general in that area called him Isha Asaph. Okay. Mm-hmm. Which sounds almost Arabic, in its pronunciation. Yeah. But so I have summarized this meeting between Soleimani and the king because it's not really that interesting at this point, Mm-hmm. And so despite his age, Yeshua is still vigorous, and for hours every day he's receiving people from the mountains and the valley, and he's teaching them and blessing them. And sometimes he's also healing.
Oh, okay. The word gets out quick.
He does heal only when the suffering and the diseases have served the purpose of their soul.
Oh, yeah. Because without pain, there's no gain, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So he is actually capable of judging, when the people have suffered enough mm-hmm. and are entitled to some kind of healing.
Right.
And and rest. And he was traveling very rarely to the lake Dal, even though he enjoyed wandering in the water and walking among the water lilies. So this is one of his favorite activity. That lake has the bottom of the lake is very muddy, very soft. So it's actually very soothing and pleasant to walk on it.
Yeah, I bet it is.
And because it's shallow, you can walk among the lilies for a long time, and enjoy it. Yeah. So that was one of his favorite hobby when he was visiting the lake. And he's also bowing in front of the statue of the awakened Gautama, of course. Yeah. And usually he will do some meditation in front of the statue. And when he does that, visions of his beloved Miriam are coming behind his eyes shut. So at that moment, he knows exactly where she is, what she's doing, and the state of her mind and her soul. Yeah, he can see all her distress or her joy, whatever she's going through. And he was also thinking about, there was also Eleazar, as we know as the Apostle John, whose proximity was felt very precisely by Yeshua. So they are linked very close. And he also knew that Peter, one of the close disciples, was no longer here. He had the cruel vision of Peter being crucified under the Roman Emperor Nero. So Peter was crucified in a normal position. And the church is saying that they put him upside down. Yeah. Now,
I don't know why they would have to.
yeah, but anyway.
Yeah.
And the execution had taken place on a small square on the way out of Rome at that point. And this was all orchestrated by the Roman Emperor Nero. And then there was Saul, as we know as Paul, who wrote most of the Bible, who wrote what has been collected in the Bible.
Right.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
He was not a disciple of Yeshua, and he was, as we have seen before, the former husband of Miriam. Okay, and Saul had been decapitated by the Romans also, because his metamorphosis could not extract him from the idea of a fight to hold. Saul was always thinking that you have to fight,
right,
to send ideas in the world, right? Or to convey ideas, you have to fight.
I don't think the Holy Spirit was working through that.
No. And the blade that Saul was always carrying on the side of his leg, basically was taken care of him. Finally.
I met his demise with that. Mm-hmm.
And Judas, so Yeshua is also looking at Judas, and he had died alone in complete isolation. Yeah. So Yeshua was using what he calls the secret joy. When he was, looking at all this stuff, it is not exactly a pleasant news, right?
No.
In itself, right? But he was using a mechanism inside him that he calls the secret joys. It was not a position of indifference, of relative to the abominations and the suffering of our world. It was a force of love out of time, a love and a compassion, comforting and healing, a love gathering that in its ultimate state would erase the wounds of the flesh and the frozen memories of the soul.
Well, it's acceptance too,
yes,
right?
Acceptance too, yeah. Knowing that, there is better beyond that. And Yeshua's thoughts are also flying to Elohim. Elohim is this extraterrestrial presence, who has been helping him and making sure that the plan was executing according to what had been planned. And of course, Yeshua was not expecting any visit or appearance from Elohim, since the plan had unrolled itself completely with the crucifixion. And Yeshua knew that the divine and its messengers of the divine being the extraterrestrial in that case, have the infinite wisdom to distill their presence with a cleverness that ignores our little desires. Their love knows exactly what to do and when to do it. Sometimes, however, Yeshua was speaking to Elohim as if talking to a friend. That was mostly when Yeshua was revisiting some events of his life. There were some pages that Yeshua would have loved to revisit. One thing for certain is that Yeshua had lived his life in one shot, without considering things that may have him hesitate or modify one of his chapters. He had been always true to his path. His life was the exact image of Yeshua, and he was very much in peace with it.
That's good.
Yeah. So Sarah, the sister of Yeshua, and Mariam, on their side, were not moving out of the village anymore. Their hair had become gray under their veils. And so years are passing by. And for a long time, Mariam was no longer waiting for Thomas. She realized that even though she's, hopefully hoping that he will come back one day, she realized that he's not going to come back. Yeah. And so I don't know, it's not being said if Yeshua ever told her that Thomas died, because he knew that his brother was no longer alive. But maybe, I don't know, maybe he kept the hope alive. Right. I don't know what it, and this is not specified, yeah. But anyway, a couple of shepherds were courting Mariam, and she's still relatively young, and so they were courting her, and actually they both built her a house. a small
this is
separate...
my side that I built for you.
Yeah, a small separate home, you know.
Mhm.
And apparently, supposedly, 2,000 years later, there are still some traces of that dwelling in the little community of Usemark.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it will be interesting for the people visiting that place to try to find
The
the
remnants of it.
the house
Mhm.
of Mariam. Yeah.
Mhm.
So you are asking about the age. So Yeshua is now reaching 80 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I
Okay.
was actually completely off. Yeah. He's
Mhm.
now 80 years old. When a big event came in the small community, and more specifically in the life of Yeshua. And suddenly, one day, a dozen of monks are showing up in the village. And watching them, Yeshua noticed that they were coming from different origins, right?
Mhm.
Some were similar to the monks of the Himalayas that he has met when he was younger, whereas others looked like monks from India, from the regions of Rajagriha or Lumbini. So it was kind of a mix, a melting pot of monks. And after being directed by a man from the village to Yeshua, one monk came to talk to him. And the monk, following the usage, bowed multiple times in front of Yeshua and placed on the ground multiple strips of colored fabric.
Oh, okay.
So that's what they do. And then on top of the fabrics,
Mm.
they place a little wooden chest.
Mm.
And in that wooden chest are actually located some incense, what we call incense, which at that time was pieces of resins that you burn, right?
Right.
And a second monk dressed in blue came also next to the first one. And the second monk was actually the interpreter, the translator. And the request was actually a demand. So a large number of monks and pilgrims who were following the path of Buddha, so this is all about Buddhism, had decided to meet not far in the middle mountain. And they wanted to discuss the grand principles, the fundamental truth of Buddhism, and make some choices as multiple currents of thoughts were developing. So, they see that, it's going in different directions. And so they're all meeting to try to regroup those directions and bring them together for a unified teaching of Buddhism. Yeah. And because Yeshua's reputation had come to their ears, and since some monks had listened to his teachings in Meruvardhana, they wanted to have Yeshua's opinion on certain points. So they are inviting him as a speaker. And after all, Yeshua was called Asaph, right? The reconciliator. And of course, he would have to travel, but it was not that far, supposedly, no more than a week of walking.
Oh my gosh.
So, as usual, Yeshua is silent for a moment, surprised by the request. And he's thinking a little bit, after all, it may be good for everybody, he doesn't know exactly what. He thinks he needs to think about it for at least a night, overnight, before giving his answer. And he's also saying that, what Buddha had brought to humankind was so complete and so perfect. He was wondering, what could I add to it?
Yeah.
It didn't make much sense, And so as he's mulling through these thoughts, Yeshua glanced a little rainbow, in the sky, which colors were blending without interfering with each other.
Oh. His little sign?
It was a sign, exactly.
Yeah.
And he said immediately, yes, I will participate and I will speak in front of the audience, So he would follow them and add his wisdom to their counsels, And so the trip is taking place, and it is actually exhausting for Yeshua. He's 80 years old, right? He's riding a mule for 2 weeks. So I've tried to locate the on a map, and I will show that to our audience.
Wow.
Where what is called the Council of Harwan is taking place. So it's the northern part of Srinagar, but Yeshua is living a few days away from Srinagar. So it's actually quite a ride, especially at this age. And he's going with his disciple and friend Yabid, to that place. And they finally arrive in a place called Harwan, where the council was taking place. And there are some pictures in the internet which are still showing that beautiful place, which is
Oh,
made of
really?
it's like a
Oh.
little plateau with a bunch of terraces, you know.
Mhm.
And at that time, there was a little temple in the middle of the meadow. The temple no longer exists, but it's really nice. And he sees a large amount of monks and nuns who are gathered and raising tents while praying at loud voice, you know. And there was a small, as I mentioned, a small temple of stone in the middle of the central meadow. And it was a beautiful mess, full of colors and warmth, in which you felt very good. And that was the words of Yeshua. The interesting part is that this is not a council dedicated to men only. Women
Oh,
are participating, right?
that's
Yeah,
nice.
the Buddhist religion is a lot more
Welcoming.
welcoming and flexible than
Mhm.
Judaism or Christianism. Yeah,
Mhm.
in that you know, especially the early Christianism, where women didn't have a soul, right? So, and again,
Mm.
the opening of this assembly, this gathering, is based on astrological computation, and Yeshua had to wait another week despite his growing pains in the feet and the back, you know.
Oh.
And at that point, he's not refusing a low chair and a few pillows that were offered to him.
Yeah, be a little more comfortable.
Yep. On that special day, after a week, you know, when the stars are
All
perfectly
lined
aligned,
up.
there are 400 to 500 bhikkhus and bhikkhunis.
Bhikkhunis, I
So,
like that.
so the bhikkhus is the
It's a lot
term
of
used.
people.
Yeah, it's male monks basically in Buddhism,
Mhm.
and bhikkhunis are the female monks.
I like that.
The nuns,
Little
yeah.
bhikkhuni.
So everybody's gathered on the small places located in front of the little temple, and they're all surrounding the temple, you know, and listening to the speakers. Yeah. And Yeshua had been set on the first row as a guest of of importance. So he's looking at the monks, and some are wearing the color ochre, you know, other carmine, others are wearing dark blue robes or even black robes. But most of the clothes were patched and old, you know, and worn out.
Mm.
And some had even had some pieces of sculpted bones, you know,
Oh,
that some
kind of held it together, or
well, and also I think it's this ritual, not ritual, but current of religion coming from the Himalayas. We talked about that
okay.
in the first episodes, yeah.
Mhm.
And Yeshua felt like he was wealthy among them because his robe and coat were, although not fresh anymore, were always impeccable, you know.
Right.
And we
Right.
know he had a special
It's kind
way
of
of.
hard to throw things in a washing machine there, right? Before you
Yes.
leave. Yeah.
And so the first day is spent in songs, mantras, and endless prayers and rituals that Yeshua was trying to decode. Okay, again, this whole council is given in multiple languages, right? And Yeshua does not understand all the languages. So he's using what is called the technique of the removal of the reflection. So it doesn't explain exactly what it is, but I suspect that it is you made an abstraction of your mind. I mean, you remove the mind completely, right? And you let the teachings go between your ears or your eyes directly to your heart.
Right.
Yeah, and that's how you understand it.
Mhm.
It was his way to accept and understand, you know, new concepts and ideas
Without interference.
without interfering with the mind, and when you are using a language that he did not understand. Yeah. And the next day is spent discussing some teachings and doctrinal points. And when Yeshua could not understand the language, he had a dedicated interpreter and translator next to him who was talking to him at low voice, you know. So that was quite good. So the essence of what was being said and shared was perfectly clear, and Yeshua enjoyed a delicate, luminous, and knowledgeable way how the various states of consciousness were presented, you know, as well as the description of the higher planes. So for Yeshua, who is used to go into the astral realms and the Buddhic planes and all these, you know, higher planes, seeing those people describes the techniques and the environment of those planes is wonderful for Yeshua because he can tell that they are really there.
Right. They see a lot of what he sees.
Exactly,
right?
yeah. And more than ever, Yeshua was seeing the perfection of the path that the awakened Gautama Buddha had created for humankind, and Yeshua's soul was bowing in front of the precision of the various steps, So again, this is something that we would like to convey to our audience, maybe looking into Buddhism and some traces of Hinduism is not bad also.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's very enlightening. However, for Yeshua, there was a but that was coming to Yeshua as he was listening carefully to the various monks who were speaking on the small stage of stone. That but that Yeshua had on his mind was telling Yeshua that the awakened had not been awakened for nothing. So when he says the awakened, he's always referring to Gautama, the man that the being that was called later on the Buddha. And that the apparent complexity of his teachings and the depth of what he had visited, understood, and integrated were not hiding a supreme simplicity and ultimate spontaneity, aiming to reduce everything to its simplest expression in the human heart. So this is what happens quite often, right? The human being tends to dwell into complex concepts, and actually gets lost into those concepts. And somehow we always avoid the simplest and easiest path.
Because we think that it can't be that easy.
Exactly.
Right?
So at one point, drifting away from what was being expressed on the stage, Yeshua remembered a few words engraved on a large wall of stones in Lumbini in India. And that message from Gautama had touched the young Yeshua at that point, and he had never forgotten it. So the message was saying the following things. It was saying, "Bhikkhus, my brothers, can you tell me how you see these leaves in the palm of my hand? Are they numerous or not when compared to all the leaves in the trees of the forest?" And of course not, answered the disciples, right? The leaves that you picked with your hand are nothing compared to all the leaves of the forest. And the awakened says, how to say the opposite? So are all the truth I taught you. They are infinite in regard of the truth I told you. It is so because they cannot be communicated, but also because it is not necessary to transmit the infinity.
Okay.
Okay, so I think he's trying to tell his disciples that, I can transmit to you, I can teach you some truths, some simple truths, but there is really no need to transmit the infinity of truth because we don't have the mind or the capability to understand it.
Hold all that, and understand,
And then Buddha Gautama said, the flower of truth does not have as many petals as it is said. So Yeshua had a little smile on his face as he was extracting himself of these thoughts, For the sun and for the one that reached the shores of the sun, the everything is reduced to very little. Quite often, certain truths that we are trying to transmit and teach are becoming obstacles by creating confusion and vertigo in the recipient, right? So, a lot of things to think about, right? And the next day was dedicated to Yeshua. So he had the entire day for him, actually. The assembly wanted to hear about compassion and service, which in Yeshua's mind was a single petal in that famous flower of truth. And in fact, a lot of debates were causing some divisions, and it has been going on for a long time within all the currents of thoughts related to Gautama. And the point under discussion was centered around the notion of the awakened being or the bodhisattva. So again, for those who are not familiar, a bodhisattva is basically a being who had reached the level of enlightenment, but decides to come back and incarnate again. So basically that being doesn't need to incarnate anymore on that planet, right? But he decides to incarnate again and teach and help the people who are lagging behind, all the other people, until the last human has completed the path.
Oh, what a sacrifice.
Yeah, it's an enormous sacrifice. So some people, I mean, among the monks, they were pretending that such a path of service and enlightenment was only reachable through the monastic state, whereas others were saying that it could be reached by any human being, no matter its style of living, and that it could lead to liberation and complete union with the divine. So again, it's this eternal conflict between, do you have to be a monk or a nun? Did you have to dedicate your life, in a monastery to reach God? Or can you also do it by living the life of,
Right.
in the world,
Right.
being married, having a family, having a job, losing it, paying your taxes and everything.
Right.
Which I think it's a much more difficult
it is
path
much more difficult
than being in a monastery.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. But anyway,
Mm-hmm.
so Yeshua is wondering, this is the question which is basically asked to him, what should you do? How to approach it for the best possible result and outcome. And he's wondering if he's going to talk about his life, of his hand in the hand of Miriam, human love, of his refusal to submit to the frozen scriptures, the Torah, and all those, the rolls of scriptures of the Judaism, and of the fusion of his being with the spirit of the living, which is the Christic energy, coming into him. So he's wondering, should I talk about that? But he was too humble and discreet to talk about this trajectory, And besides, if he was there in this place, in this location, it was because some had understood that he could express himself without having to justify all the details of his life.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a reason why he's there. Not everybody
right,
gets
exactly.
invited.
Yeah. So he didn't need any type of introduction
Right.
to justify his presence in that council. And on top of that, the light of his soul, his aura, was probably enough to inspire a real listening.
Right.
Again, let's not lose track of the fact that a lot of these bhikkhus and bhikkhunis are advanced disciples, and that they have a perception of the aura and they can see a lot of things. So Yeshua starts his discourse. Bhikkhus, my brothers, and you also, bhikkhunis, my sister. Here I am in your Mahasangika. So the Mahasangika is basically a great assembly. The Mahasangika Council of Harwan. And why is that? Everything says that I did not follow the path of the Lord Gautama. Everything. My face, my robe, and all the words that I am using. He's obviously not a Buddhist, right? But you invited me because you wanted to hear me talk about the dream beyond the infinite. You are saying that you recognized behind my human mask a presence which is affirming in its flesh and its consciousness, and beyond these, that the totality of what is in perpetual transformation. Therefore, neither you nor me could stay into what has been written or not written. Behind the written or non-written, the question is not to know what had been said or not said. The question is, in fact, to not know anything. The question is to know what was experienced by those who tore the veils, the awakened. But before all, what is an awakened behind the enigmatic surface of his smile and his gaze turned inward and beyond the cosmos? Yeah. And when we see a representation of Buddha or statues of him, paintings, whatever, he always has this very enigmatic smile, right?
Right.
Yeah.
He knows something.
And quite often his gaze is not even looking at you, his eyes are looking, and the
third eye,
turn inward, watching the cosmos. So Yeshua continues, there is no need to search or fabricate complicated words to say it. You cannot contain what is always expanding and reinventing itself endlessly, mocking time when time is embracing space. Nothing can be split or compartmentalized, as there is as many colors and dreams as there are dreamers. Right? So true. In truth, the universes that I visited taught me that the greatest master can only sketch the outer shape and the nature of the gates of the awakening, and perhaps not even evoke the numbers of those gates. There are so many of them. And we could say there are probably as many gates as there are human beings, right? Quite often, I'm telling you, the pictures drawn by the disciple of life are in fact anchoring them on a path, which, for having been supposedly direct, is turning itself into a labyrinth.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, again, going back to what we discussed before, right?
Right.
Yeah, taking the simplest way or taking the complicated way through the scriptures, yeah. And Yeshua continues, I am a simple man, and I've always avoided the great words, too complicated, while respecting the richness of their vastitude. What I call the living in me also taught me that what is complex erects inevitable barriers, when in essence all is porous and flexible. This is why, in the full of acceptance of that porosity and flexibility of the divine breath, can I today address all of you. So Yeshua just finished these words of introduction when in the distance he saw a silhouette, rather slim, who was standing up beneath a tree behind the crowd. And it was the silhouette of a young adolescent wearing a long loincloth of brown color. And of course, Yeshua knew that silhouette and he wanted to walk towards him, but he could not do it at that moment. I mean, he was
center stage,
talking to this big audience while watching that adolescent far away. And so he's resuming his speech. The question you all ask me is this one. What is required as indispensable to start and pursue with strength and determination the path to the awakening? And because I'm a simple man, I will summarize it in simple and direct words. Can such a path require a monastic approach, a renunciation, or can it be done in the world life? Okay? And that's what we discussed, right? Do you have to be a monk, or can you do it as a regular human being? And Yeshua says, to answer it, I will simply look towards the sun and the moon. If they were given to us in this universe, it is because our nature requires both. Is the moon opposing the sun? They both fulfill their function. It is the lack of common sense that makes us forget it. To adore the daylight and fear the night, it is like inhaling without exhaling. In the same way, the monk should not reject the atheist, or the atheist laugh about the monk. Oh, you will tell me, how can we compare the power of the sun and the power of the moon? I will tell you, the sun that you see do create shadows, and the moon brings light during the night. And I will add, isn't it easy for a monk to be among other monks? And isn't it a challenge for the atheist to walk in the world while searching the infinite? Do you have to seek safety or challenges?
Yeah.
Now, how can we reconcile the words of the one that teaches the withdrawal from the world and the senses, and the path of the one that wishes to grow among the challenges? Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, definitely.
It is very easy. You have to erase all ideas of opposition using an elementary logic. Every border is simply an illusion. The same goes with all exclusions. Only the dependencies met on one or the other path are creating an obstacle.
Right.
The quest for love can only be done through the inclusion, right? We have to accept. Thus, on the summits as well as in the valleys of the heart, the path of compassion and service to life The path of the Bodhisattva can be done behind any mask, even the mask of the bhikkhus and the bhikkhunis. I learned to live like a monk, and then I mingled into the world. I learned to make abstraction of my senses in the same way you hold your breath under the water. Then I let my senses expand to discover other sides of the diamond. Once upon a time, I met a woman. We know he's talking about Miriam, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm proud of it. She's still my bride, even though I live far from her, like a monk wandering the world without seeing any impossibilities. Thus, what am I? A bhikkhu? An atheist? A man who did not know what to choose? Some say a master. It is of no importance, because when you live in the compassion and the service to all forms of life, whatever the path taken, it is always true and respectable. Quite often it is said, such song, such melody is nice, but we don't even notice that it is made of a multitude of notes, tones, and words. It is the same with the spirit of the living. It is one that gathers the multiple. So at that point, the rest of the speech, it probably lasted many hours, is not given to us, but it's going to continue for a long time, and he's going to answer questions from the assembly, as he enjoyed so much doing, I mean, that is bringing back to him all the memories of teaching around the lake. And finally, helped by two monks, he stands up and places his hand on his heart. And he says, as a conclusion to his speech, "Can I add something, my brothers and sisters, in spirit? Please, get out of the philosophy and jump with both feet into joy." The secret joy. So I guess what he's trying to convey to us is that, let's get rid of all the books, all the dogmas and everything, the complexity
Right.
of the religions, and jump with both feet into service and compassion and feel the pure joy. And that last comment is causing among the assembly a wave of laughter, And Yeshua feels very happy about this, because for him, those few last words were the most important. In fact, in his heart, this untold power that Yeshua named the Eternal had never been serious. It was simply foreign to boredom. So again, this is so true what he said, right? We consider religion, you have to be so serious. You have to be stern-faced when you enter a church, right? You have to be respectful. You have to be silent. I mean, this is the Western approach, which is completely different from the Eastern, the Hindus or even the Buddhist approach.
You have to repeat after everything they say. And
yeah. I mean,
get all,
So again, I'm going to read it again. In fact, in his heart, this untold power that Yeshua named the Eternal, the Infinite, had never been serious. It was simply foreign to boredom. So I think it's important that we all remember that. And Yeshua finally finishes his lecture, and after receiving some gift from the assembly, he wishes to get out of the Mahasangika to take a little rest, and is now free to look at the young adolescent, which is still under the tree over there, and that no one seems to notice. He was still there. And Yeshua is trying to walk in the direction of the adolescent, among the crowd of monks. And while he is walking, some people are, some bhikkhus and bhikkhunis are trying to touch his robe,
Yeah, he's like, no, I gotta get there.
And the face of the young man becomes more and more precise. And the adolescent actually responds to Yeshua with a little sign of his hand while smiling. And of course, I guess everybody would have guessed who was that adolescent, right?
Yeah.
Can you say it?
No, you say it.
Well, it was Babaji, of course, yeah. Yeshua's brother in the eternity. So Babaji, interesting, was identical as he presented himself to Yeshua some 65 years before,
So he's still
on
a
the
little
path
kid.
to the mountain of Solomon. Yeah. So the first time Yeshua met Babaji was when he was 14 or 15 years old, during his first ascension of the Mount of Solomon near Srinagar. And at that point, Babaji presented himself as a young adolescent, you know. And now Yeshua is 80 years old and Babaji is still identical. And we know that he
That's
can.
how he likes to present himself.
Yeah, we know that he can.
Present himself as anything, really.
Yeah,
I mean,
he can. Exactly. He can be anything.
But he likes the childlike
Anywhere,
look, right?
anytime. You know. Yeah, he has a complete master about the materialization. You know. So Yeshua waves to Babaji and he smiles. And at that point, a man richly dressed comes with a large present in front of Yeshua. You know? And just enough time to thank the rich man, and Babaji had disappeared.
Timing is everything.
Yep. So Yeshua understand that it was useless to search for him, you know. Between him and Babaji, words had no importance, right? Babaji was going his way, Yeshua was going his ways, and both knew that their paths would meet.
Eventually they'll meet again.
Yeah. So I wanted to add another piece of information which is interesting about this Council of Harwan. There have been multiple councils before, a long time ago. This is supposed to be the fourth Council of Harwan. Four times it happened. And it took place during the 1st century, right? So this perfectly timing with Yeshua was 80 years old, right?
Right.
So he would be 80 years old during the 1st century. This is the 4th time they are meeting at that place in Harwan. And the interesting part is that they have found records of the 1st, 2nd, 3rd council and the subsequent councils. But the 4th council documents were never found.
Ah, interesting.
Interesting.
I wonder why.
I suspect they have been taken away and probably hidden because they were, of course, relating about the presence of Yeshua, which is in contradiction with what the church
he
has
should
been
never
saying.
have been there to
No,
begin
he
with.
should have never been
So,
there. Yeah.
Let's get rid of the evidence.
Exactly.
Happens a lot.
That's an interesting piece of information, that the Akashic memories are giving us too. Those documents have disappeared. Yeah.
Right.
Anyway.
Wonderful. So we have one more chapter left.
We have one more chapter, yeah.
Ooh, thank you all for hanging in there until the last
perhaps,
one.
Yeah, we'll try to have some kind of conclusion, maybe an episode about conclusion and kind of a question answer. So if in the audience, if you have any specific questions that you want to ask us related to those two books, please do so in
the comment section.
In the comment section, and we'll try to address them.
Right. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in with us. We'll see you next time.